Okay, good evening members. Welcome to this meeting of Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee. Can I start by drawing everyone's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in Market Car Park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by council staff. Okay, so item 1, apologies for absence. We have received apologies from Councillors O'Leary and Councillors Lisa Newport, and we have substitute member Councillor Cross for Councillor O'Leary. We also have 2 non-members in attendance, Councillor Angelina Marriott and Councillor Mike Steptoe. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held.
Chairman, you just missed one.
No, Gary's a member.
Oh, do apologise. Confused me, bossy.
No problem. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of November. Are the minutes agreed, members? I'll take that as agreed. Thank you. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. By way of item 8, I think I ought to point out that my wife is a member of the leisure centres in the district, so presumably that is declarable.
Okay, I think there's probably a few members and family members of leisure centres, so if we can just take that as noted that that's acceptable. Everyone happy with that? Yep. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Any other declarations? There are none. Okay, item 4, public questions on notice. There are none. Item 5 takes us on to the Chair's report. We've got a full agenda, so I don't intend to read the report. It's just for noting, but if anybody has any questions on the report, I'm happy to take those. No, are we happy to note that, members? Thank you very much. Item 6, again, this item is for noting. It's the Corporate Peer Challenge and the Actions Update. So the item is self-explanatory. We're progressing with the recommendations that were made under last year's peer review challenge. I'm happy to open that up if there are any questions from within the report. If not, we will note it. Oh, Councillor Ian Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's just noting the fact that everything is on track, which is very good to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if there's no other questions or comments, members, we will note that report and move on to item 7. Okay. Item 7, so this is the persistent and unreasonable behaviour policy. So we're bringing this forward to get it in line with other policies. There's nothing in there out of the ordinary in comparison to other councils. Again, I will open it up to questions. We have Stephanie Meek here with us for any answers of a technical nature. Does anybody have any questions on this report? Councillor Deborah Squires-Coleman.
Thank you. Can I just refer you to 1.8?
Councillor Squires-Coleman, sorry, if you come a bit closer for those at home.
Thank you. Yeah. Can I just refer you to 1.8, where that individuals can appeal, and that after the annual reviews, can I ask if those residents affected will be notified of the review results?
Thank you. Stephanie's, oh, there you are. Sorry, Stephanie.
Thank you. Yes, just to confirm, they will be notified whatever the outcome.
Councillor Newport.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You said that it's bringing it in line with other councils. So when you say it brings it in line with other councils, is this a standard template, or is this something that we've made changes because we've needed to make those particular changes? Can you just, I just want to know if this, when it said in line, is this unique to us, or is it a template? Thanks.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Stephanie?
Yep, thank you. Just to confirm, it isn't a template as such. It's guidelines based from the Ombudsman that they give. So we have just kind of formatted that into a policy which covers all of the grounds so that it's quite clear to both residents and staff as well. Thank you.
Councillor Ward?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Will this come under standards?
Stephanie, did you, in terms of reporting?
Yeah, that's correct.
No, that won't.
Councillor Whittam?
Thank you, Chairman. Look, there's not a word in here that I disagree with. I think it's almost a sad indictment of the times that we're in that we even have to put together a paper like this. Because we would all expect decent standards. The only thing that I would say is there going to be some sort of moderation process to make sure that if bad behaviour is identified, that perhaps unacceptable service by the authority has also been taken account of? You know, and I go back to the simple analogy that in a lot of A&E departments, in a lot of places, we see these sorts of signs. And sometimes people who are fairly distressed through being quite sick at the time, shall I leave it at the fact that they're not given particularly good service, and that tends to up the standard. So in no way am I condoning poor behaviour, but equally I think we've got to have some sort of moderation process to make sure that poor behaviour isn't provoked. But I don't want to take away anything from this report, which I totally endorse.
Thanks, Councillor Woodson. I think that's a really valid point because it does work both ways. Just to be clear, we have had a policy previously. This was about updating it to current standards and best practice. But Stephanie, did you want to respond on the customer service element of it?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, completely agree. Each case will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. It's also done with a team, so that's including managers, director, and it will be signed off by strategic director. So just to ensure that it is fair and the whole case has been reviewed.
Councillor Steptoe.
Chair. Yeah, I just wondered if perhaps this would filter down to the parishes. Whether the parish would be encouraged to do something similar?
So it's a good question. I don't think we can enforce it, but can we share our practice with parishes and then it's for them to decide if they want to endorse? Can we take that as an action? Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Chairman. We do have a similar item on our agenda at Rayleigh Town Council coming up this coming Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I would like to move that recommendation 1 be approved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vilma-Wilson. Okay, so recommendation 1 as set out on page 59 to approve the draft persistent and unreasonable behaviour policy as set out in Appendix A. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Okay, so we will now move on to item 8, which is the Leisure Centre investments, and the report begins on page 75. I would just like to remind members that if any member wishes to discuss anything relating to Appendix A, the purple paper for this item, I will need to move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that there would likely be a disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Now, I know all members were given the opportunity to bring forward questions in advance so that we can try and not exclude anybody. I haven't received any questions, but I'll open it up in case we do need to exclude the press and public. Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've already cleared this question with David, so he knows what I'm going to ask him. This refers to R2 as a recommendation. I wanted to know... Sorry,
Councillor Ward. I was just asking at the moment, do we need to go to private and confidential? If we don't, we'll open up the debate and I'll come back to you first.
Thank you.
Just a moment. Okay, thank you. So if everybody's happy, we'll stay live and I'm going to open the report. So I'm going to hand over to, is it Phoebe or Paul's going to present in the first instance? I'm going to hand over to Paul. I would just like to start by saying I think there needs to be thanks to both this administration and the previous, because a lot of this work relates to ideas, work, the working group that has gone on for some time, and I think it's worth noting that there's been a lot of input into this. It hasn't been the work of a few months. But I'll now hand over to Paul to present the report.
Thank you. Members, so the report in front of you tonight is, as the leader has said, quite a long journey to get to this point. With no surprise that those that were here when we approved the contract back in December 24, that there was a list of a variant bid, which was if investment was to be put into the leisure centres, what additional income would that generate and what would the rough costs of development be. So since the award of the contract, we have been working with EA to work out what they did want to do. And obviously after 6 months, we wanted to see whether there was anything else they'd want to change. Some of the work that they do want to add is to put lobbies on both leisure centres, because the heat loss is quite significant after their assessment, which I think is wholly sensible. So it does put the council in a good position. It does increase income to the council, and I think David will be discussing the internal borrowing to make it happen. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open up to questions. I'll come to Councillor Ward first, and then Councillor Newport, and then Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. It refers to R2, and obviously it continues into R3. But it's basically, I'd like to know what the interest rate is going to be for the internal borrowing. I'd like to know the term of repayment, and how will it affect, let's say, if the Bank of England, is it a fixed term over a fixed period, or is it a flexible term over a fixed period? Just want to understand, you know, because it's internal borrowing. Are we matching the Bank of England rates going up and down, or are we offering to ourselves a fixed term over a fixed period?
Thank you. I'll hand over to David. I will just say we have got a session coming up on this in detail for members to go through some of the intricacies, but I'll hand over to David to answer that question.
So the interest rate is effectively based on what the opportunity that you're missing out on from having the money and investing that. So it's based on the average, so the weighted average return. So currently it's 4.5%. 3 years ago it was more around about 1% or less. But there'll be generally a calculation every month or every quarter that works out that, and the budget will be set against the leisure code to take into account the interest, and then the debt repayment, which we call minimum revenue provisions. That's MRP, and so that's based on the asset life, and then there will be a budget put against the leisure centre cost centre. And the income will then be expected to cover those costs, and it'll be over the asset life. And so it will be variable rather than a fixed rate.
I'm still not understanding the answer. Basically, are we looking at a fixed term for repayment?
Yes, so there'll be a fixed term for the repayment.
And sorry if I may come, will the interest rate fluctuate according to Bank of England rates, or will it be a fixed term over the period?
So the interest rate will fluctuate. It will be revised every quarter, and it will be based on the average income that the council would have earned from that. So it will be effectively what the average Treasury income rate would be. So currently it's 4.5%. The Bank of England rate is 3.75. Generally, you don't put it against the Bank of England rate. It's the sort of opportunity cost rather than base rate. And that's generally probably 80% of the time, that's the way it's calculated.
Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of questions on this. I'm fully supportive of this. In fact, I don't think it goes far enough, but I think it's fantastic that the work's continuing, and well done to Paul and Phoebe on this. One of the questions I just have around the governance on this is that the delegation is to the Director of Assets, but I thought the contract, Paul was dealing with the contract under communities previously. So is that switched around, or what reasonings behind that? And then the other thing that I do know about this, and I'm a little bit disappointed about, and I am a member of Rayleigh Leisure Centre, and that's the fact that there has been no engagement with any of the users of the centres. I've not heard anything about this via EA at all, and the proposals within this where members could have, of the actual customer, could have fed into this. Because I have seen comments, I think we've all sat here and said, yeah, it's a great improvement on Fusion. But I have seen other comments criticising EA. You know, so it's not all brilliant, and it'll never be all brilliant with any operator. But I know we are, you know, we're strides ahead of where we were. But that engagement piece, I think, should have taken place before we were here making these decisions tonight. Because although under engagement and consultation, it says we will be engaging with users and residents for the plans for the centre. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse where we're at tonight. We should have gone out and said, we're proposing to make these changes to your leisure facilities. What do you think? To endorse what we're doing as councillors and how we're spending their money.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. On the engagement and consultation piece, that was undertaken prior. There was a big piece of work done under your leadership when we had the working group, the Leisure Centre working group, and that's where a lot of the feedback came from, and there were surveys within the centres and there was other works done. Yeah, there was definitely consultation with... Okay, well... Okay, we can bring back the report that was done at the time, but I was on the working group and I remember seeing and being told how many surveys had been filled in from within the centre from users, but we can address that. That was done under the working group of the last administration, and that fed into the work that came forward from that group and that committee. But we can address that, and absolutely consultation is always important and engagement is crucial. But we are in a position where decisions need to be taken because of local government reorganisation, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, but it's absolutely a big factor in decisions that we're making so that we safeguard our assets. In regards to delegation, I will hand over to Phoebe and/or Paul to give a response on that.
Thank you, Chair. So the delegation is to me for the works. First off, because it will be a capital programme works. It will be my team that will be overseeing that, also because it's works to an asset that we own. And also regarding the delegation for the contract. So again, because we have a lease as well as the contract, again, my team will pick up the arrangements that need to be changed to the contract and to the lease to make sure that they tie in. It's quite right that Paul leads on the service delivery of the contract. I kind of lead on the asset and kind of the technical side around the legals for the assets. So that's why it's delegated to me, and also one of the reasons why it's also come to this committee. And then, yeah, the delivery of the service goes through Paul and also then through the Communities Committee as well. So it's over two, but the delegation is for me, for my team to pick it up to make sure the capital works are being delivered within budget and to the standard that we expect.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson has just pointed out to me that there's some details about the responses to surveys that was initially conducted on page 89 of the report. So again, they were previous, but that was what shaped a lot of this work that came forward. So I hope that helps answer those questions. Any other questions, members? Councillor Hoy?
Thank you. Sorry, get nearer. Thank you, Chairman. Just going back to the delegated authority again. We have broadly on 1.7 and 1.8 itemised the things that need to be done in very broad terms, which does include changing place facilities, and you know I was going to mention that. Does the authority which we're delegating is talking about approve the main works packages? So this doesn't, I just want confirmation this will not allow any changes to be made to the broad scope of those itemised points in 1.7 and 1.8. So without the approval of this committee, those could not be changed. The second question is, how are members going to scrutinise this? This is a big project. It's one of the biggest projects we've undertaken for many years, and it seems a little bit, we're just letting it go a little bit if we're not scrutinising it on a regular basis. But I don't think once a quarter is enough. I assume the chair of communities or the chair of this committee, I'm not sure which one would be scrutinising it, but where would the members be in the scrutiny of this? Would it just be after it's done, or would it be just a report every quarter, which I don't think would be frequent enough?
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. To the first point, I mean, it's certainly my understanding that the scope of the works is the scope of the work. Some of the intricacies around that will need to be delivered by the asset team, but I certainly wouldn't want to be signing off, and I would hope that nobody else signed off any fundamental changes, because we are agreeing to a list of improvements that fundamentally set out the future of those leisure centres. So absolutely, I think we can put that on record, that any changes to the broader scope would have to come back to a committee for decision on that. So that covers that part off. In regards to the second point of your question and scrutiny, I mean, obviously it would have to come back through committee regardless, because as you said, it's a huge undertaking for us and something that we need to keep a close eye on. Overview and Scrutiny Committee should be keeping an eye on these things as well, and they do bring EA in. They've already been in at least once this municipal year, possibly twice in fact. And then the asset team have a register and a record of all the projects and if they're keeping on track. So I'll hand over to see if there's any extras that would go in because of the scope of the project, because it's a good point and we wouldn't want anything to slip in a 3-month period.
To be clear, we'll be entering into a contract with EA with the list of things that need to be done as put in front of you this evening. That will not change. The only change is if something unexpected is found, which is always the way with older buildings. There may be something else, but there's a contingency for that. But we will report that accordingly, as we do with all the other projects. In terms of governance, we have set out governance that we will be reporting back quite frequently, probably to every quarter's meeting of what's happened. If there is anything that is untoward or has gone wrong, then obviously we'll do something slightly different to that. But we've certainly got the governance structure as detailed there. A member will be involved in that, whether that's the chair of this committee or communities happily discuss that. But we want a member to be there at the strategic ones so that we're clear and then can report back. We're just operating some work at Brentwood, which would be done in a similar way to here, which is a refurbishment. So we're starting to get the structure work so that we're getting the reports back and we're starting to receive good reports back about what's happening, health and safety, all the other stuff that we really want to be concerned about, as well as the work that's being done. So we will be presenting that all to you as the quarter works are done.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Linden, then Councillor Cross, please.
Excuse me, I will stand up because it's easier for me. Councillor Newport mentioned regarding the public residents and users' involvement, and I think it's incredibly important. I know for a fact that Councillor Newport's had an awful lot to do with Rayleigh Leisure, being a member and also in previous administration being the leader, and also it's been one of his passions there. I'm a little concerned that we don't just brush off the fact that the public haven't been consulted. I would like that revisited, revised and reported back to committee as soon as possible. At the end of the day, we're spending their money on facilities for them, and I would have thought that this report, this document, this survey would have been a massive big survey that we'd actually undertaken. So we are listening to what the people of Rayleigh and the Rochford district actually require every day on social media. And okay, we take social media with a pinch of salt at times, but it's important. It's one of the major ways that we can actually listen to the majority of our residents. And Rayleigh Leisure, Clements Hall is mentioned on a daily basis. So I think that it's an incredible point that Councillor Newport has made, and we've got to put the weight on that and actually get that report back and all have an input into any future engagement with the public on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Paul Brace in, but just to reiterate, if we don't agree the package of works now, it doesn't get approved in the budget and then it slips. But the engagement was done as part of the EA process and is in the report. But let me hand over to Paul, because can we bring Paul in first on your last point in case he covers something off better than I have?
We, as part of the contract, when we went out to procurement, we provided a list of things we thought would be useful to do in the leisure centres and would improve them. And when we agreed the contract, that list was kept there. Once they'd sieved out the ones that wouldn't work, so there was climbing walls and other bits and pieces which they dismissed as not working and not generating income, to make it a sustainable leisure centre. So that list hasn't changed. There's only one thing that's added to it, which is the lobby. What we will be doing, once approved, that we will be going ahead with it, is that in the consultation there are no designs that are currently done for any of this work at the moment. And that's very much where we want users, customers. There is a changing places. There is a design for that, but certainly of how it should look inside the changing places. But we want to talk to customers about the best places for it, the best entry, talk to user groups, etc. There is not a single design being done for this yet, and that's very much what we want the current users to be able to inform. So the list has been around for quite some time of the work that was going to be done, and engagement was done with residents at the time. There'll be greater engagement now around the items that are listed, probably except for the lobby, but certainly there will be for those services and activities that they participate in, and particularly for Clements Hall will be the changing rooms, because that's the biggest bugbear I know that residents have got currently, but they're beyond serviceable use, so we need to get on with that.
Thank you. Councillor Linden, you wanted to come back?
Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your comments. Absolutely no way am I going to do anything to disrupt this, because effectively this has got to go through, and it is a very much needed project. Our health is the most important thing. I know that more than many. In the options of do nothing, devise smaller schemes, or approval, absolutely. Is there any way we can devise smaller schemes? Not now, we'll pass it through, devise smaller schemes to then be incorporated into the ways going forward with... When we've got public engagement, we can public engage about the whole of Clements Hall, about the whole of Raleigh Leisure, or we can do a smaller public engagement into those who want to do paddle boarding or bowling or tennis, or the outcry for a swimming pool is there, but obviously that's a far bigger subject which needs to be taught somewhere down the road. But if we could devise a more inclusive communication with those particular groups, it would help an awful lot. Instead of going out there with one big consultation, yeah, it's great, no, it's not great, we should have more tennis. Let's find out what the people within the tennis or within the other activities, and we can then target any investment into what they're actually asking for, rather than us telling them what they require. Thank you.
Fully accept your points there, and certainly we would take anything that customers may raise. I know some have raised with me around paddle courts, etc., but there are other ways of delivering that. So they are all considerations that we've got listed. This is an investment that we can deliver this way through council funding and get a return. We haven't got the money to do an investment that doesn't give a return to pay back the borrowing. So that's why this route is being taken currently. As part of that consultation, if other things are brought up, then that does give us a second chance to be able to do it. And there are many different ways to deliver those services that not necessarily council money. We're working with a good partner in EA, so there's lots of opportunities to do further work. I will tell you now, at 15-year contract, this will not be the last time that work will be done on Clements and Raleigh Leisure Centre. So those things will not be lost, and what we can do, we will do.
Thank you. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Assuming this is approved this evening, I'll keep this brief. Can we be assured that there will be a project plan or Gantt chart to show the regular progress and updates brought before committee? Thank you.
I can answer that with a yes, because I see the asset project plans, and we've noted already that this would need to come on every single committee meeting. So the answer to that would definitely be yes. Thank you. Councillor Newport.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, not to labour the point on this, but in terms of the investments that have been selected here from EA, this is very much based on a mass consumer driven to me in terms of gym use, pool use. I mean, you've got numbers of users using that. One thing that I have noted from this, and particularly the investment around Clements Hall, is it doesn't seem to be anything for the squash courts that are in a real bad state of repair. And I was really disappointed in that because they've got a really good squash league there, and I know that's really been quite a bone of contention really with that, because there's been investment going into gyms and that, but nothing about the squash courts. So going back to your earlier point, Paul, where you said this won't be the first investment. So when you say this won't be the first investment, will future investments need to come from the successor to this council? That's my question.
Can I just come back in first? And you're absolutely right, Councillor Newport. And for anyone that's on my social, I've got a list of about 30 things that I intend to bring forward to the committee, and squash courts was certainly one of them, but badminton nets was another. So I think it's a really valid point, and it would help with some clarity for members. Thank you.
My opinion of whether it will be under a new council, well, I would expect EA to be looking at refurbishment of areas. That will be part of their responsibility to maintain the building. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. It is just over a year that they've been in place. We've got to give them the best opportunity to deliver a good service. I think Clements Hall and Rayleigh have needed work doing for a long time. This will put it in a very good place. This will bring footfall to the building, will make it two far better leisure centres, and then we can start doing the rest of the building. And some of that is landlord responsibility that we will have to pick up, but there's certainly a lot that we will expect EA to do. So I'm not expecting a second bite of the cherry for that, because that's normal, bringing a leisure centre back up to standard over a period of time. Once this work is done, we're not going to stop.
And just to add to that point, and then I've got Councillors Hoy, Ward and Cross, within the budget, which comes later on in this meeting, there is a budget in there regarding the responsibility, the landlord's responsibilities. So we're not going to fall into a trap of not having the funds available to deal with some of the statutory works that are required within our contract. So I've got Councillor Hoy first, then Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say, to start with, because I didn't say it the first time, that I'm really pleased this is coming forward. It's something I've been on about for years. I think with Changing Places, I first spoke to Councillor Webb many years ago about putting Changing Places in, so I'm really pleased that's come forward. I just wanted to go back to the consultation, because I was on the working group, as Councillor Belton was as well, and there was extensive consultation done, but it wasn't done just with the users of Clements Hall and Rayleigh Leisure Centre, because the point I think we were trying to get across is that there were people not using the centres. We wanted to know why. And I think one of the things which came across was that there were people who would now make use of the Changing Places facilities who couldn't use Clements Hall at all, and were going to, I think it was Whittam from memory, which had brilliant, which I know myself and Councillor Gooding visited once to see what their facilities are like. So I think the consultation was very wide-ranging, and I think it was very good, but I think it's probably been missed by people who weren't actually on the working group to see what's happening. And I'm a bit concerned that there are members of the leisure centres who weren't aware of the consultation and may have been missed. That's all. But my understanding is the figures we got were very convincing, I have to say. So I just wanted to say that there was an extensive consultation done, and it did highlight the things why people weren't using those leisure centres, which hopefully this will now bring them into those leisure centres.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. And I think the points that you and Councillor Newport and Councillor Linden have raised have been noted for this evening, so that we can factor that into those next steps and the actual detailed work that comes forward. So I've got Councillor Ward next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I popped into Clements Hall. There's a couple of things that came to mind, and I think it's been a long-term thing. The most disappointing factor at Clements Hall has been the changing rooms. That has been a big put-off to a lot of people. So I'm pleased that will be one of the first things that they'll be looking at to get that up and going, because that will increase intake coming in. Improvement to the cafe and the area, I think that's going to be important. Having looked in comparison to David Lloyd and Virgin, I wanted to see what the main, how can I put it, main people that they were up against. Obviously, there's a big difference in costing, I understand that, but if they can even slightly approach it, I think it will be a big improvement in getting more customers through the door as far as Clements Hall is concerned. The second point is future-proofing with LGR. What is the situation in future-proofing all this work? Because basically, we're looking at 15 years here, but LGR is looking at maybe 2-3 years' time when we're going to have a totally new administration who will be managing these properties. So I just need to understand what is the future-proofing around this.
So with this contract and any other that's agreed under this authority, they carry over, so the contract still stands, so they can't be undone. So the terms of that contract will still exist, and it will be for the new council to oversee that. Thank you. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't studied the report in detail, but is there provision for improved heating and air conditioning? I think I've heard complaints about the squash courts in particular either being too hot or too cold, but are we planning to, to improve the heating and also cooling aspects of Clements Hall in particular? Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Phoebe?
Thank you. Yep, so as Councillor Belton's already made a point that there is a budget in for landlord expenditure as well. So we are working with EA around looking at heating solutions and ventilation solutions, because the existing solutions are at end of life in the buildings. So we will work with EA under our landlord statutory obligations.
Thank you, Phoebe. No mention of air conditioning, though. It mentions ventilation and heating, but not air conditioning.
Ventilation includes air conditioning, so yes, it is. You would not put a gym in without any air conditioning, I could assure you.
Okay, are there any other questions? If there aren't, we have seven recommendations to get through on page 76. Now, are members happy for me to take them on block, or would you rather any of them be broken down individually? All together? Okay, so I will propose to move the recommendations on page 76, R1 to R7. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vilma Wilson. Right, I'll read them out for the purposes of those at home, but I will just read the entire lot. Recommendation 1, approve the facility investments to Clements Hall Leisure Centre and Rayleigh Leisure Centre as detailed in this report and in the leisure management contract submission. Recommendation 2, the committee recommends the internal borrowing of up to 4.4 million to fund the leisure centre investments to be repaid by the increase in contract income. R3 recommends that 4.4 million be added to the capital programme to undertake the facility investments. R4 confirms that the internal borrowing will be accounted for in line with the Council's Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27, including application of minimum revenue provision in accordance with statutory guidance to ensure prudent repayment of the capital sum over the asset life, charging of an internal interest rate aligned with the Council's approved Treasury management policy, reflecting the opportunity cost of using internal cash balances, annual review of the repayment schedule to ensure affordability and sustainability within the medium-term financial strategy. R5 notes that the repayment of the internal borrowing will be funded from the increased income generated under the leisure management contract, and that these will be monitored through the Council's budgetary control processes. R6, that delegated authority is granted to the Director of Assets and Investments in consultation with the Chairman of the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee to A, approve the main works packages for both leisure centres and the award of contracts for undertaking the works, and B, negotiate and agree an amendment to the leisure management contract with Sports and Leisure Management Limited to reflect the anticipated increase in income and expenditure from it, and to the leisure contract to take account of the works, changes to services and additional income. And R7 approves the creation of a leisure income volatility reserve of 250,000 funded from the 25-26 outturn to mitigate the risk of fluctuations in leisure income and ensure stability in meeting borrowing repayment obligations. All those in favour? Okay, unanimous. Thank you, members. That was unanimous. So I'll catch my breath and we'll move on to item 9 on page 119. So this is the Q3 budget update. It's just for noting. I'll hand over to David to see if there's anything he would like to say before we open up to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just to highlight the underspend being forecast of 511,000. This potentially will be higher as we confirm the extended producer responsibility income. And I'm willing to take questions. Thank you.
Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report to the Section 151 officer. The question is really around significant underspends and overspends on staff vacancies, and then there's some areas where we're spending more on agency staff, and there's a really significant overspend in Waste with the Norse contract of £157,000. I think my concerns are twofold. One is we're clearly, are we deliberately not recruiting? Are we having problems recruiting? And is that lack of staffing in those areas where we have an underspend on staffing giving us capacity problems? Are we able to operate as we should, or are we not operating where we should be? With the Norse contract, 157,000, is that going to be an ongoing? Can you expand on how that's occurred, whether or not it's likely to be ongoing costs that we're going to have to incur? Some of the other examples are there's an underspend of £100,000 on mainly vacancies on licensing. There was another one of about 98,000, I think that wasn't staffing. Various others on staffing levels. So can you answer that? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Just before I hand over, I feel this is a deja vu moment. We're going to have this conversation about staffing every committee meeting, and it's right that it gets brought up because it is a risk.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I said it within my question, but is local government organisation going to make it harder to recruit to those positions as well?
Thank you. So we're certainly not intentionally not recruiting. I think has always been the case. We've always got active adverts and recruitment processes ongoing. I'll hand over to officers to discuss in more detail. Regarding the recycling, some of the overspend as detailed in the report is because of the amount of goods and weight of our residents are recycling, which you may see as a good news story because they're well exceeding what you would expect to be recycling. I would encourage people to reduce reuse before recycling to bring that down, but that is part of the overspend cost and has been factored into the budget, which is coming up later and obviously at full council. But if I hand over to David on any more specifics.
Thank you, Chair. If you took away the interest income, then there would be quite a tight underspend, or quite a small underspend. Every year you do have overspends and underspends, and we monitor the overspends. Underspends, there could be issues around recruitment and delays, and maybe a bit of staff churn. So we do monitor that, but generally I think in this year we seem to be more able to have a fully staffed team. There seems to be, or council. I think the underspend's quite a bit lower than it's been in the past. On the Norse amount, the overspends generally on the collection, but also there was national insurance pressure which wasn't budgeted for, so that was a big pressure. We did speak to Norse beforehand, but they were quite slow to come back to us on that. And then for LGR, we're not sure. The budget has been set, or the one that's been proposed for 26-27 includes quite a lot of growth items which we will need to recruit to, and that is to cover some of the pressures that are going to come from local government reorganisation and the pressures on staff. And we are going to go, going to go and recruit quite aggressively, if you want to use, if I can use that term. But we'll need to see what the market's like, because LGR is happening in most councils across England, and some of the recruitment will be possibly temps or companies to help to support us. So that won't all be individual staff. It might be that sort of approach. But we do think there will be some pressures from LGR.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Hoy?
Sorry, so very broadly, I think the answer to that is it's not affecting our capacity to act or to perform our duties. Is that correct at the moment?
Correct. And every committee, when the KPIs come forward, those details are in there so that if there is any problems within certain areas, we can challenge those through the committee. But largely, I believe everything is being delivered as we would expect it to be. There's always pressures, but the team are pretty resilient to delivering against those pressures. Councillor Hoy?
I am asking it because obviously the EDRT papers came out today and there seems significant problems within the appeal process. So I didn't know if that was down to staffing or not, but I can ask that question at EDRT next week.
Thank you. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. There's a massive underspend on the parks and open spaces attributable to 136k of insurance savings. I'd like to know what the total cost of insurance for parks and open spaces is, because that, to me, is a huge figure to underspend on insurance costs.
I'm not sure we've got the right officer to answer that. Does anyone know the answer? Yeah, thank you.
I don't have the detail. However, it's the allocation that has changed, which has led to the reduction in the open spaces. The overall cost of insurance has actually increased.
What we can do, Councillor Cross, is come back to you with exactly what that cost is, if it's of interest. I think it would be... Yes, but if you would like, we can arrange for that to come back to committee members as an answer. Councillor Lindham.
Thank you. Those of us who are on planning and on development, to actually have the significant figure of underspend on development, and the fact that it's down to vacancies, I haven't noticed in our committees and what is being going on. It says there's less appeals going on, which I can understand, but there is going to be an avalanche of planning and development coming our way. It is literally sitting there at the top of the hill, and it's just about to slide down. So I'm a bit concerned about the making sure that we do, as Councillor Hoy has pointed out, that we do put a lot of weight on making sure any vacancies are filled within that department. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've brought up in this committee before, and it's absolutely critical. We may not be able to employ planners, but we can certainly have a budget there that allows us for that growth and that support through third parties, as we're seeing through just last week. One of the recommendations for deferment will come at a cost. And the other cost that may come around that, as you've just mentioned about appeals and things, is some kind of fighting fund, because as you said, things are going to come thick and fast and we need to be able to deal with them. But that's for another committee. But I appreciate the comments. Thank you very much. Members, I haven't seen any other hands, so if everyone's happy, we can note that item. Is that noted? Noted. Thank you very much. So moving on, we have item 10, which is the 26-27 budget and 26-29 medium-term financial strategy, which starts on page 131. Now, obviously, the budget will come to full council in just a couple of weeks, so it's not my intention to present a budget to you this evening, but obviously it is here for questions and answers and suggestions, and we have David with us to answer any of those. So my intention was just to open straight up to questions, if that's okay, unless there's anything you want to say first, David. No? Okay, so questions. Councillor Cross.
Thank you. Chair, we are still in a cost of living crisis. Many people are finding the big bills from heating over the winter period hitting their doormat right now. What provision is there in our budget for additional payments to help people in the cost of living crisis, which is very much still with us? Thank you.
Thank you. So we haven't put forward any specific fund like we had a winter fuel fund previously, and no one has come forward with a suggestion, despite me asking if anyone from any group would like to bring anything forward. So I don't believe we have a specific line for it. If that's something that your group wanted to consider, then it would need to come forward for costing. Time is now very much of the essence because I've been asking for months. But I think we're very alive to the fact that there are still issues out there. And a lot of what we're doing is about improving facilities, about services, about ensuring that everything is there for those people that need it without it necessarily being a cash payment. But if you have got a scheme in mind that you wanted to bring forward, then there's a small amount of time before the budget. I know David won't be too keen on that, but that's where we are. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll no doubt bring something forward at full council. Thank you.
Okay. All I will say, Councillor Cross, is bringing suggestions forward at full council leaves no time for the numbers to be crunched, so that can leave a challenge. You're well within your rights to do so, but the best option we have of working to get something through is to do it in advance, but that can be done if you choose to.
Chair, I'll just clarify for because Councillor Cross is not fully aware, because we've been working with the Section 151 officer, and officers aren't able to give us all the information back that we've requested yet. So we have been working on that for some time, and the Section 151 is putting together some costed options that we can bring forward. So I'm just clarifying, because it's not Councillor Cross's fault. We're waiting for information back from officers on that.
That's absolutely great. It's just what we don't want is on the night trying to pull things together. So if that work's being done, then we can all consider that properly in comparison with everything else. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Another question. I believe there is a figure mentioned for Fairview Park, something like £120,000 allocated. The Chair has made public in her social media posts that she's in favour of investing in the tennis courts, in particular in Fairview Park. So I wonder if that is included in that figure, and what else is included in that figure. Thank you.
Thanks. My comments about the tennis courts, I think, was some time ago. It is something I'm in support of, and I asked for us to look at external funding, both under the last administration and this one, because I think it would be a vital improvement to that area. And I know some works were done, but there's still 2 courts that are out of action, if I believe. Exactly. David, did you want to give any specifics, or Paul, does anyone have the actual detail behind that on them? Are you happy for us to bring that forward separately? Because the officer that's leading on the intricacies of it, again, we've got this before. This is just to take forward to full council before the details, but we can present that to you in the meantime.
Yes, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Councillor Squires-Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a question regarding the Engage With Us report? Is there, what are the demographics regarding age of the replies?
I think we did bring forward a paper on this at a previous committee. I don't have the specifics. Does anyone? No, I'm looking down the line to see if anyone's got the specifics on them. I think what we'll have to do, if it's okay, Councillor Squires-Coleman, is send you the report. There was a members' briefing where it was gone through, and it showed that there's never a lot of responses to budgets, which is disappointing because it's one of the biggest decisions that we make all year. But we do have some of that information, so that can be recirculated if that's helpful.
Yeah, it's just that I'm wondering that from some of the answers, I might be making an assumption, but it looks like, I know we have older residents, a lot of older residents, but it just seems to me that some of the answers do seem to be swayed from the older demographics. If we can somehow reach the younger residents in our community while we're putting out these surveys.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something, again, it's a comment that comes up time and time again. How do we reach people? How do we get them to engage with us? And it's where all of us have some responsibility to try and encourage that. Because I think you're right, it's very difficult to get the younger members to engage. Many of them don't even realise the council exists, let alone that they can have a voice in its future. But that's something that's noted. But I don't have any specifics other than what's in the report. Did I see Councillor Lindham?
Thank you, and thank you for the report. The LGR fund, obviously there's no specific budget for LGR, and the comments that are being made regarding the LGR fund being there to be drawn down as and when needed. How did you, I can't see where you actually based the figure. How did you actually come up with that figure, and what was the basis for that? Because obviously it is a complete unknown what the expenditure is going to be regarding LGR and what might come forward. Thank you.
So it's just an initial estimate. It's potentially going to be quite a bit higher. Some councils are setting aside 3-6 million. We're probably going to set aside quite a bit less, just of the nature of the workforce and where, if there were to be any redundancies, where they would fall. Sorry. Where the redundancies and where the costs would fall are quite different for Rochford. A lot of it will depend on also which council Rochford eventually ends up with, if it's going to be the best for Essex, or if it's going to be one of the other ones. So we're going to wait until the outturn, and then as part of outturn, possibly set aside some more money into the LGR reserve. But for now, it's just keeping a small amount there, but having some other reserves available to transfer if required.
So you mentioned a figure potentially of 3.5 million. Again, other councils won't know because it's at this moment in time the unknown. So you've set aside 540,000. So where will you be getting, and how much have you potentially allocated that might be drawn down into that, and where will that come from?
So there'll be a review of the reserves, and looking at the outturn and the underspend from that. That's the key bit. We're not the same size as some of the councils that are setting aside a large amount, or the likes of Chelmsford and that, which are a lot larger, and the workforce that potentially is going to be made redundant would be is over 55. That's a big pressure on a council like Chelmsford. There have been discussions around who would meet the costs. A large amount of the costs for LGR is going to be met by the county, but on the run up to vesting day, the redundancies of that will be within this council for Rochford and then for Brentwood. And there will be an apportionment of any of those pressures. It's not all redundancy. There's also going to be other pressures around systems. And so as we looking at new contracts, we factor in that in. So we are consciously trying to reduce any costs that Rochford will incur as it leads up into LGR. And then after that, there will be a large part will be picked up from the unitary. But the main point is to set aside some money and have the potential to top that up if required, and that's the approach we've taken, and we've got sufficient reserves and provisions to cover probably the maximum amount that we would need.
Thank you. Before I come back to questions from members, I must apologise. I would normally bring in non-members to ask, and Councillor Mike Steptoe has had his hand up for a long time. So if I may, I'll just bring Councillor Steptoe in quickly, then I'll come back to members.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to the item of 500,000 in the budget that potentially set aside for Rochford Town, it's been given a generic name. I would like the committee, if possible, to reconsider that and get it actually changed to Rochford Town Regeneration. If that's potentially possible for the committee to do, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Steptoe. So that is on page 163.
Sorry, Chairman, could I second that, please? This is something I've already raised with the Section 151 officer, and I felt it should be specified for Rochford, so I'm happy to second that proposal, or actually make the proposal, because I'm not sure if Councillor Steptoe can, actually.
Thank you. So if I may, just so members know what we're referring to. So page 163, item 14.1, the first line there is allocated as capital investments unallocated, but it was the administration's intention for that to be ring-fenced for Rochford Town regeneration. I'm happy for that to come forward from Michael Hoyt, Councillor Michael Hoyt in this committee, and seconded by Councillor Simon Wootton. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, because I know that was always the intention of that money, and it's something that you and others have lobbied for some time. And the specifics of that would come forward in due course via the relevant committees in the same way that's been done previously. So do we need to take a vote on that, Jackie, just for clarity? Councillor Hoy?
There is a further £100,000 in the budget for Rochford as well. My proposal's in... We have group discussions with the Section 151 officer, and obviously I'd mentioned adding the 100,000 to 500,000, so it's actually £600,000. I haven't got the page number for that. I didn't have that on me tonight, but there is a further 100,000, so it's going to be 600,000 in total.
Thank you. So if I may, the initial 100, I believe, is for the signposting, the wayfinding, and that the specific detail. So I think the only concern about putting it all together, and I'm not against putting it all together, but if I can just set out some of the reasons there was concern, is that if that whole 600,000 went on one asset, we lose the opportunity to do the wayfinding and the signposting, which part of some of the consultations that were done previously were recommended as would make a big difference. So I still think there is 600,000 for Rochford in there, but the intention was to keep it as two separate standalone items for that reason, just to ensure that piece of work could go ahead. What I'll do, we've currently got a motion on the floor, so if I open that up so that members, because I can see a few hands waving at me, and then we can get into the vote and the detail. Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you. It was just pointing out where the 100,000 is on this. It's actually on page... Hang on. It's actually on page 163, and it's right at the bottom under Director Place, Rochford Town Centre, 100,000. So it's actually on there. Yeah. And can I also ask, in regards to that top item, capital investments unallocated, will that be replaced by Rochford Town regeneration, as that states?
Yes, so that's the motion that's been put forward. That amendment would come forward, so that line would be amended to the new name, just so there's absolute clarity and direction for next year's council as to what the intention for that money was. Thank you very much. Councillor Cross, you're waiting on the previous, aren't you? So, yeah. So, Councillor Newport.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Chair. A bit confused. I'm just going to ask some... I've got a few questions to put to the 151 officer. So, my first question, we've seen today in the news around the Police Fire Crime Commissioner's budget and the cuts to policing. And there's, 100 staff potentially being made redundant and police officers. So my first question is, and I'm glad Mr. Brace is here to answer this, how will the MTFS support the community safety strategy going forward? Because I see that there's no money in the community safety fund in the budget. And is that if the PFCC does not deliver grants as he has in the past, how are we going to deliver that community safety strategy? So that's my first question.
Councillor Newport, sorry, could we just put a pin in that for 1 second, just because we had the motion open and I think we were debating that motion? Yeah, if you want to come back on that. Is there anything on the motion from anybody else? Because then we can just have that amendment agreed, because it seems to be that there's some sort of consensus, and then go back to the main. So all those in favour of renaming item 1 Rochford Town regeneration? So that's covered. Okay, so that's unanimous. So we can now go back to the main report, and it should be Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate getting the order right. Going back to the capital programme on page 163, there doesn't seem to be any allocation in the new budget for play spaces and play equipment. I'm not sure I'm reading that right. And open spaces and park is a 000. There is a park in my ward at the back of Holly Tree Gardens that has had a dilapidated set of, or one goalpost in it, and the grass is usually kept quite long. But there's no play equipment other than those goalposts in that particular park. So are we really spending no money on improving our recreational areas? That's what I'd like to know. And if we are, can that be included, the park at the back of Holly Tree Gardens in Wheatley Ward? Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a whole play space strategy that hasn't stopped. So that is still happening. How it's detailed within the report, I can let David explain if that's easier. But it's certainly not stopping, because there is that strategy that's already been agreed by a previous committee.
Yeah, so it's just I think it's 4 further down. So it's play equipment replacement in highlighted in green. It's covering both of those now. So it's all covered by that.
Okay, would that include, so that's replacement. Is there any provision for new areas to be put in?
Again, that would come as part of the place-based strategy, so through Environment Committee. So if you maybe bring that forward to the committee specifically, but at the moment it's just about bringing forward the budget that's there. But thank you for highlighting that. Does that cover that item for now? Right, back to Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. I think Paul's got the gist of my question that I asked. The first question I've got. Just got another 2.
We've had no indication yet from the PFCC that the funding we normally receive each year, as does every other district and borough council, we've had no indication that will disappear. We certainly know there is commitment to town centre policing and neighbourhood policing, and we will continue to work with the police on that. Yes, it will make it difficult with no additional funding to support projects. So we will have to consider that going forward. But at this point, the PFCC have not informed us that there's any change to funding the CSP in its grant each year.
Okay, I'll just come back on that, Chair. Do you not think that we should put budget in place? What if the PFCC says, well, we're going to cut your grant by half? What are we going to do then to deliver on the strategy?
That budget is for all partners, so that's a conversation that I would have with the police, would have with health, would have with all the other partners, sit around the table. It will have to be a joint commission.
Yeah, no.
But yes, we may have to consider using some funds.
From David, where would we use the fund? Where would we get the money from, David, please?
So we currently have a general reserve which has some money that isn't allocated, and there will be an additional review. There will be a bit of a pressure from also trying to fund LGR from that reserve and any other pressures, but there would be some money. It depends on how much would be required.
Okay. All right, Chair, I think I've got the gist of it. So my second question is, how does the MTFS help residents who are on, I think we've got about 400 residents on the housing register right now. How does it help those that are on the housing register and those that are in temporary accommodation? And this is really important because myself and Councillor Ward recently received an email from a lady in temporary accommodation. She was told that she'd probably be in there for about 2.5 years, 3 children. 1 bed, was it, Councillor Ward? 2. Small cramped conditions. How does this MTFS help those residents?
Does anyone want to give a view on that? Because that is somewhat opinion based on how it helps those individuals in temporary accommodation. We don't have Lauren Stretch here, but does anyone else want to make any comment? David, is there anything, or did you want us to come back to Councillor Newport via Lauren? I think it's best to come back via Lauren with any specific details. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't expect these directors to answer that question on housing specifically. So, okay, I'll leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you. And one thing I think is worth mentioning, because you raise a really good point around community safety. this council has shown many times that we can be responsive to issues that arise, and we did that with the winter fuel payment. So if there was a situation that arose, I'd like to think that the council would come together to come up with a solution and to find a way to fund it, as we've shown previously. But let's hope that that doesn't happen and those grants keep coming. I've got Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's going back to page 163, if I may, and it's the item under Director Environment, and it's the three top items, which amount to over £1 million. Now, I know that Councillor Cross brought something up about a local area to him, and obviously we all have local areas that we want to see improvements in. I would assume that 1 million, depending on what you want, is basically down to bidding with regard to items you may want, like councillors would come in and want to have a look at spaces and to look at what can actually be done and improved. I take it that's going to be the right route to go.
So I think you're looking at the 25-26 budget. The items there are actually for this year's budget. And again, it comes back to the earlier point about the play space and the open spaces strategy. So any suggestions you want to make should be made via the Environment Committee. But there is a working strategy and a piece of work there ongoing. But it's for members to come forward and make cases if there's something more pressing, because we know our areas better than most officers are likely to. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Steptoe wishing to come back, then Councillor Hoy, then Councillor Cross, if that's okay, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to thank the members of the committee for taking on board my proposal, sort of. Thank you for that. With regards to the 100k, it was listed. It's mentioned as finding. Beg your pardon. I'm not quite clear what that means. I think my interpretation is it's publicity, but I'm not sure that's correct. And could we have a little bit more breakdown of details, perhaps offline, on this particular point, with the ward councillors as to what that actually means and how that's going to be utilised?
Yes, of course. It's on the Economic Development, Culture and Tourism Committee, so that's where that piece of work has come from. The specifics within it, you'll definitely be able to have some involvement into. It's largely about signs, about finger signs, to help people find their way through Rochford Town Centre, because it's not necessarily the easiest to navigate and doesn't have a natural flow. But certainly we can ask Economic Development to take that up with ward councillors, but that was where that project came from initially. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on that point, the capital investments, which we've now renamed Rochford Regeneration Fund, hopefully I've got that right, is currently sitting under Director of Assets and Investments, but regeneration comes under Economic Development, Regeneration and Tourism. So can I just have confirmation of where that spending would be controlled, by which committee? My second question really is around the capital programme. We've got an extensive capital programme listed here. And this is not a criticism, we understand the reasons why. There's always been a capacity issue at this council, because of the size that we are, to actually deliver our capital projects on time. My concern is that with a likely cut-off in October this year of spending, potentially, what is the risk that some of these projects won't be able to be completed by this council and then won't be taken up by the new shadow authority, which will start in 2027?
Thank you. And that is a question that we've challenged ourselves every time when coming up with a capital programme. Is it deliverable? We don't want any white elephants. We don't want to disappoint anybody or manage it, and we want to manage expectations. So obviously works allocated to the Cultural and Cultural Assets Freight House. We know that's already gone through all the processes and is well underway. Same with Mill Hall. We had the planning permission passed just recently so that some of those works can progress. The leisure centres we've just agreed to, Civic Suite. So the only one that is essentially brand new is the Rochford Town regeneration, but there's lots of conversations and works ongoing to ensure that. And what we are being told that we need to do before September, October, whatever that deadline becomes, is agreements and contracts need to at least be in place to give it that safeguarding. Money doesn't need to have been spent, works don't need to have necessarily started, but there needs to be agreements in place. Officers may wish to add to some of that.
Happy to add to that, Chair. Around the point around the allocated 500,000 that sits under myself. Obviously, if that is regarding any assets, that will be split. But until we know what that money is being spent on in Rochford, then we'd go through the process of bringing that to a committee and then allocating the budgets out, and then that would be vied and updated through the capital programme and the updates that this committee receive through budget monitoring. And just to give the committee confidence, Andy has got significant capital manager resource in his team that are leading on all these big projects. So there has been a lot of traction that we've built in, and there's a lot of momentum now that is delivering these projects. And regarding the cut-off date, that things won't stop after the legislation is laid. We will continue to carry on. There might just be a bit more scrutiny and some more hoops to kind of jump through if anything isn't committed, subject to LGR. But just wanted to give the committee confidence that the team has grown. We've got some really good capital project managers in the team now, and they're hitting the ground running, delivering a lot of good work alongside Andy managing them. So I'm happy to spend the money that has been committed.
Thank you. Did I see another? Councillor Newport and then Councillor Cross.
Gosh, this all sounds very exciting. It's amazing what's happening in this short period of time before we're abolished. Isn't it? I mean, we've been. I'm very impressed, and when it's all delivered, I'll be even more impressed. Yeah, Councillor Belton. So, Chair. So it's fantastic news about the Rochford regeneration. So, and one of the other areas that I'm sure you two are very keen on, like myself and Councillor Ward, would probably be the regeneration in Hockley that's sat stagnant on the shelf since 2014, and the Hockley Area Action Plan. Is there anything in the budget to do anything in Hockley? Because I'm sure the residents in Hockley Rayleigh's had money spent, Rochford's has money spent, and I think Hockley may feel a little bit left out. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. I mean, as I imagine you're aware, we don't have a major asset in Hockley to invest huge sums of money in, such as the Freight House and the Mill Hall and 57 South Street. So I think there is a fundamental difference there. There's a lot of work going on in Hockley around the town centre and support that we can give them, and through the Economic Development Committee there will be some reports coming forward following on from some of the work that Councillor Hoy started last year around shop fronts. We've also had investment into Hockley Woods, open spaces, play spaces, so there's been a fair amount of investment. If you have suggestions as to what else could be done at the Hockley part of the district, then we are all ears as always, but the details are within here, but we don't have a major asset to invest hundreds of thousands of pounds in, unless I'm mistaken. Phoebe, do we have a large asset in Hockley?
No, I think Councillor Belton, I think it's about the place, and I think that's what the Hockley Area Action Plan does refer to, and I just think it'll be a real shame not to pick that up and perhaps do some of those actions that are in that plan. So it's there, it's sat on the shelf. I think we could be reviewing that, putting budget aside for Hockley to do some of this work that has been sat there stagnant for so long. I mean, we're moving at a pace now, and I think it's something else that I've just heard from Phoebe about the capacity they've got. So I think it'd be brilliant if something could be done for Hockley.
Yeah, something we can definitely take off board. Regarding the Hockley Area Action Plan, this is something I discussed with Councillor Mason, and he was able to enlighten me on a lot of the detail. And I think a large part of it fell short. There wasn't an uptake from someone who wanted to build there was a supermarket involved. There was a whole host of things that were never able to actually come to fruition, and councillors that have been around a lot longer than me may have more of the detail. But certainly we can bring that action plan back forward to a committee to review, to see if there's anything in there that is that is deliverable. Certainly where Hockley is concerned, one of the main things that they are asking for is investment into the town centre, the greening, the tidiness, and the neighbourhood teams are acting on some of that. Yeah, absolutely, the place element of it, which our neighbourhood teams are able to support with, as well as the work we're doing with the town centres and the businesses, which has been pretty enormous over the last couple of years, over both administrations, to work with those partners. But certainly something we can take on board. Was that it, Councillor Newport, or am I bringing in Councillor Cross? Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. First, an explanation as why I missed the play equipment replacement line. I've got the wrong glasses on. These are intermediate and long range, and I left my reading glasses at home. So I see that now they're in bold. Equally in bold is the Heritage and Cultural Assets Freight House, obviously fully in favour of the 585k allocated for that, and obviously the Mill Hall and Clements Hall, etc. I wondered if there was any allocation. Phoebe sort of alluded to it somewhat, but we have the Dutch Cottage in Rayleigh, and also in the conservation area there are some houses at the top of Bellingham Lane junction with Crown Hill that are in need of renovation. We have spoken about that, Phoebe, in the past, or was it Fiona? I can't remember, but it has been mentioned officially. So is there any allocation in the budget for improvements? I think they need a new roof, a new thatched roof on the Dutch Cottage, and for the houses at the top of London Hill, beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you. You're really opening a can of worms there, Councillor Cross, because it's a hot potato of a topic quite often. I believe because they're in trust, they have a separate budget, but that's right, isn't it, Phoebe?
Yes, Chair. Regarding the Dutch Cottage, it sits separately in a trust which the council is custodian of and therefore has trustees, and therefore I'm undertaking a review of that trust, working with the trustees as well on that. But the trust has money set aside for the roof works. We just need to understand whether it's enough or not. It sits in a separate account, but the council can't actually contribute funds to the Dutch Cottage just because of the arrangement that's set up. As I said, the council holds that asset as custodian only. It's not the trustee. It's different for Finchfield. The council is sole trustee for the Finchfield Trust, and therefore, under charity law, has different roles and responsibilities. But we are looking at the Dutch Cottage and a review of that.
And the Bellingham Lane houses on the junction with London Hill?
That's Finchfield Trust, which... which one's...
At the top of London Hill, it's opposite the Con Club, you should know it. There's some terraced buildings there that are listed buildings and in need of repair.
I don't believe Rochford own them assets.
No, but it's part of Rayleigh's heritage, and I've been in communication, it's either with Fiona or Phoebe on those. It may be in conjunction with another body that we actually oversee those repairs so that they don't fall into ruin. One of those buildings in particular is quite dilapidated. So I think it's part of our duty to maintain our heritage in those buildings.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll have to take that offline, Councillor Cross, because there's certainly nothing in the budget to repair other buildings, but I do hear what you're saying, and there's an element of potentially caregiving. Right, I've got Councillor Wotton, then Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I think over the next couple of months, council tax bills will roll through people's doors, and they would probably be quite surprised when they look at the eye-watering amount of the bill, just what small proportion it is in relative terms that goes to Rochford District Council. And I think it's worth pointing out, but it will lead to a question, that successive administrations of this council over the past few years should be proud of their achievements in terms of delivering a balanced budget for a number of years We continue to have no external debt. Yes, all right, we've agreed some internal debt, and rather creatively are funding it through external repayments, which is quite clever, really. You borrow from yourselves and you get someone else to pay for it. So well done on that. And particularly with R2 in mind, again, for successive administrations for many years now to have been talking about a council tax increase of below inflation through times when it's been quite high inflation, I think is commendable on everyone across this chamber, and the ambition and the speed with which we're talking about delivery. And I can see Councillor Newport getting excited about that, but I join him in that excitement. And I also share his optimism that all this will be delivered at pace, because we're keen to do that. But it leads to a question, and I would like you to confirm, please, Chairman, that this very creative, imaginative and ambitious budget is actually delivered without any service cuts, because actually it is the service cuts that people notice. And as far as I can see, it's an ambitious budget. We'll have an opportunity to debate it in a week or two's time. But as far as I can see, most importantly, I can see no service cuts. And I think we shouldn't let that go ignored.
Absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Wootton. Yeah, there are no service cuts, and quite the contrary, there's a lot of growth items where we can add what we are delivering in places such as enforcement, community safety, customer service. So it's an exciting budget, it's an ambitious budget, but it's one that we believe we can deliver on and give great value for our residents. Thank you very much. And I've got Councillor Hoy, then Councillor Cross.
Sorry, Chairman, I was coming back about the Dutch Cottage just very briefly. Councillor Wootton obviously is a trustee of the Dutch Cottage at the moment. Interestingly, I have emailed David Dickinson today about the Dutch Cottage on a similar note. However, there is potentially funding available for the Dutch Cottage, and I did have meetings last year with Phoebe and Lauren Stretch about this, along with the trustees then, which were Councillor Sarah Jane Page and Councillor McPherson, regarding this, and there was a route to get lottery funding which was given to them. So I'm not sure if I don't know if Phoebe knows if the Dutch Cottage has applied to that funding yet. They were offered by the Cultural Engine. We're going to do that free for them.
Thank you. Councillor Wootton is asking to respond, if that's okay.
Chairman, just before we develop the conversation, I don't think any decisions are going to be made, but for transparency and openness, I ought to declare that as Vice Chairman of this Council, there is a declaration of interest that I feel like I ought to make, even though I don't think it's going to lead to any decisions, but I welcome the creation of the subject.
Thank you.
Sorry, it wasn't really a decision now, and I don't expect a debate now on this. I just wanted to put out there that was the case, and it might be interesting if Councillor Wootton wasn't aware of it, he could take that back to his trustees' meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Phoebe, is there anything on that right now, or should we come back on that item? Yeah, okay. Thanks for raising that, Councillor Hoy. Okay, I've got Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I hear what Councillor Wootton says about the budget and prudence, etc. But regarding service cuts, we have an underspend on employment salaries for, there's vacancies at the council, council employees that we haven't filled. Now that's got to affect our service delivery. So there is something in the budget relating to service cuts, and it's lack of staff. We can't provide a proper service to our residents if we're understaffed. So that is in the budget effectively as an underspend until those vacancies are filled. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let Councillor Simon Wootton come back because he's waving frantically, and then I've got an opinion on that too.
Thank you, Chairman. And, well, I'm not particularly answering Councillor Cross's point, but I think we ought to differentiate between a budget where we're making provision for the next year, whereas we're looking at the past in a previous item. And I don't think this administration or past administrations for a number of years now have ever looked at making savings through cutting staff. And I have certainly made the point in this chamber, as have others, that it is a little disappointing to see an underspend. it can lead to a natural conclusion. I don't think it's totally a fair conclusion, because actually on another budget line we talk about costs from agency staff. We do actually fill some of those gaps with agency people. So it's not a natural correlation. I think it's a very fair point, and there's certainly not a conscious effort to run below. But I'd make the point I've made in the past, and I think it's a point for our HR officers to make sure that there is timely replacement of staff. I fear that sometimes what happens, people put their notice in, and I come from an HR background, they put their notice in, and then a few days after they've left, someone wakes up to the fact, and it may be a very unfair criticism on my part, but it can be a bit of a, oh dear, they've left, we need to get on with a replacement. Or it could be a shortage of that resource in the area. But I think it's a point well made, but there's not a conscious, as far as I'm aware, there's no conscious effort to reduce. But we need to differentiate between future expenditure and what has happened in the past as a result of experience. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Cross, you wanted to quickly come back on that?
Yeah, just a quick response. Yes, I'm thankful for Councillor Wotton's clarification on that. If the budget figure includes basically bringing us up to full capacity for staff, then I'm quite happy with that, if that's in the budget figure, to bring us up to full employment. Thank you.
Thank you. And it goes further, Councillor Cross. There's actually quite a lot of recruitment. If you go into the growth items within the report, there's an awful lot of, and I appreciate you're standing in at the last minute, so you may not have got into the minutiae, but there's a lot of growth. And one of the points I make, which comes back to Councillor Wotton's point, I asked the very question. We put a budget in place. Do we then start recruiting once we get to the new financial year on the 1st of April? And it might take us 3 months to recruit that person, or they may have notice to serve. And actually, we've set a budget that we're never going to spend in a year because we don't start recruiting. And I've been assured that should the budget be approved in the middle of Feb, that recruitment can start essentially immediately, so that when we hit the new financial year, we're running on gas, because we want to deliver these projects, and some of them are a necessity. Planning, enforcement, these are things that we absolutely need. So I've asked for that to happen, because I've heard this conversation and I've made these points from that side of the room as well many a time over the last couple of years. So thank you for raising that. Councillor Newport.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Basically, just to sort of wind it up, we're not wholly, there's some very good things in the budget, I think, with conversation. We're not going to support the budget tonight, only because, as I previously said, we're still working through some possible amendments with the Section 151. So just for that clarity, it's not us being difficult, it's just the fact that we want to explore some alternatives, and we'll bring them forward in due course, and hopefully we'll be able to present them way before council for consideration. So I was just trying to make that clear, that would be our thinking tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's very helpful and completely expected. I think it's absolutely right that if we can work together on a budget, this is essentially the last budget of Rochford District Council, because next year's ones will be very much tick boxing. So if we can get some legacy projects and some generic work here where we're all happy, I'd be very supportive of that, but let's do it in a timely fashion. So on that, I think we've had a very robust and full debate. So I would like to move the recommendation. So we have 8 recommendations over page 132 and 133. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vilma Wilson. Now, taking on board what Councillor Newport has said, this might be easier. I'd like to take these on block if members are happy to, but if not, I can take them individually. Is everybody happy for them to go? Sorry, Councillor Newport.
Chair. I mean, it does look a bit silly if we abstain on noting the priorities and budget consultation, because we would note them, but on others we would. So I think the ones for noting we would, support, but in terms of the others where we're recommending to council, that would be where we'd need them separate. So you might just want to take the note in ones separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got, recommendation 1 is for noting, recommendation 6 is for noting, and Are we happy? We've got endorsing the updated corporate plans in the appendix. Do you want to? Are you happy with that, or? I can take them individually. They're only short. If it makes life easier, I think you've been transparent about your position anyway.
Just take them on block and we'll just abstain.
Okay, I think you've made it clear that it's not for difficulty.
I know, and I couldn't see the changes in that corporate plan, and I looked at it and I thought, yeah, is that right? Is it actually a mistake?
Yeah, I think, Councillor Newport, that's your corporate plan, so I'd be surprised if you didn't support it.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, we'll do them separate then.
Okay, I'm just going to take them separately. We've lost 5 minutes there. But. Councillor Myers?
Yeah, just a quick question. Does that include the amendment for the wording on Rochford?
Yes, so that's already been agreed, so we're comfortable with that. David just reminded us as well that earlier on within the leisure contract, we agreed that the budget will be updated to reflect the leisure contract agreement. So that will be a change that comes when this paper comes again, but I don't think we need to do another recommendation on it because we've done that in an earlier item. So I'm going to quickly whiz through these. So R1 is for noting that the medium-term financial strategy be noted and that proposals for the General Fund Budget 26-27 for both revenue and capital be recommended to Council for approval at its meeting on the 17th of February 26. Is that noted? Recommendation 2, to recommend to Council a proposed council tax increase of 1.95% for 26-27 with the charge of Band D property being increased of £5.21 per annum for Rochford District Council services only. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is passed. Recommendation 3, to recommend to Council that the Section 151 officer be authorised to adjust capital project budgets in 26-27 after the 25-26 accounts are closed and the amounts of slippage and budget carry forward required are confirmed. All those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Recommendation 4, that the proposed council tax requirement for the council's own purposes, excluding parish and town councils and precepts for 26-27 will be updated for the final report for council after the final settlement is confirmed. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. R5, that the pay policy statement in Appendix 2 be recommended to council for approval. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that is passed. R6, to note the priorities and budget consultation summary of findings in Appendix 3. Is that noted? Thank you. R7, endorse the updated corporate plan 24-28 attached to Appendix 4 and recommend it to Council for approval. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Recommendation 8, approve the fees and charges schedule in Appendix 5. All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? That recommendation is passed. Thank you very much, members. We will move swiftly on to... Thank you. Right, thank you, members. So, agenda item 11 is the Community Asset Transfer Register. So, following on from our last meeting, we agreed that this would be a standing report on the agenda. So, the report is just for noting. The report is for noting. I am going to hand over to Andy because there's a couple of things that have come forward, I think, post-report, but pre-meeting that Andy just wants to update you on, just so you're aware.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's just some additional EOIs that are not on this version of the report, but will appear next time. Just let members know, we've had EOIs for design cabin for 57 South Street, the Old House, Freight House and Rochford Reservoir, and from Hawkwell Parish Council on a play area, Hawkwell Common and Magnolia Playing Fields, and so they will appear next time. As Councillor Belton said, this is an update report on the recommendations that we brought to the November committee, and also just highlights the new expression of interest that we've received, which will be analysed and evaluated as per the process and principles that was agreed in last year.
Thank you. So I'm going to open up to questions. I've got Councillor Ward, then Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it's just on page 256. As a member of Rayleigh Town Council, I wonder if I need to declare an interest at the Grange Community Centre, Little Wheatley's Chase, Rayleigh, because we're actually in the midst of that application.
I think, again, there's a number of parish councillors in the room. Because this report's just for noting, there's no actual decisions come in that we're covered off on that. And I did, at the last meeting, I think I kind of made a holding position that we recognise parish councillors maybe are sometimes conflicted to some degree. I've got Councillor Cross, then Councillor Steptoe. No, I haven't got Councillor Cross. I've got Councillor Hoy and then Councillor Steptoe. Sorry.
One question and one thought, perhaps. The first one is, as Councillor Belton may be aware, I've been attending a few LGA courses. The last one was on LGR, which is why I'm talking about LGR quite a lot at the moment. There was quite a lot of concern around councils transferring assets before LGR, because obviously a lot of councils have done this previously, particularly to parish councils and other organisations. I don't know if... So the question is, have officers been on similar courses? Have they spoken to other officers from other organisations where they've done this and encountered any problems? That's that question. The second question is, and I've got to express a personal interest in this, obviously, Hall Road District Council Cemetery potentially being transferred to Rochford Parish Council, which I would be a bit concerned about on those assets. I understand that any transfers will be done on the basis of leasehold, not freehold, which would be my first thing. I know there is a parish council cemetery in Hall Road, so are we talking about the actual Hall Road District Council owned one, but there is one owned by the parish council as well, I know, in Rochford, so I'm a bit confused about which one we are talking about. I don't know if they hold that one by lease and it's theirs, or if this is about the Hall Road District Council one, which I own a plot in, which is my declaration.
Thank you. I'll hand over to officers in regards to training and experience on assets. In regards to the cemetery, I believe it is they have expressed an interest in taking over the district cemetery. But let's remember, just because someone puts forward an expression of interest does in no way indicate that it will actually happen, and we have to go through those processes. Sorry, you wanted to come back, Councillor Hoy?
Yeah, I'd just express my concerns about a parish council taking over a district-wide asset, which is used by the district as a whole, generally. I think it can work in some cases, but I think something like that could be problematic, that's all.
Thank you. Those comments are now on the record. Officers, did you want to come back on any lived experience or training or anything else in regards to this?
Thank you, Chair. So, obviously, Andy brought forward the community asset transfer principles for us to work through. As the Chair's quite rightly highlighted, just because an expression of interest has come in doesn't mean necessarily we will be transferring the asset. There's a process that we go through. We have to look at the strategic importance to the council. We have to also look at value for money. We also have to understand the governance arrangements, the financial arrangements of the entities that are expression of interest. We have seen a lot, so we have the same principles and framework over at Brentwood as well, and Rochford. We have had a significant amount, as you can see, of expressions of interest. So myself and Andy are actually working with a charity locality who support councils across the the whole of the country, and looking at how we can use their services to produce some workshops going forward for those who have expressed an interest, but anyone else who wants to attend, so that these entities that are expressing interest really do understand what their liabilities, what they need to do, how they need to be structured in order to take these assets on. It may result in actually some of them retracting their EOIs, but I think what we need to do, what this process has highlighted, the amount that we've got coming in, is that we need to do a lot of support work with them organisations. As I said, just because they've put an EOI in doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but how can we support that? How we link in with also the community governance review that's being undertaken as well, that Greg and Claire Mayhew are leading on as well. So building up them relationships with the parish council, but there's lessons learned from organisations and locality have brought that forward anyway. We've been using them to do some work on the Freight House for us. And so we'll look to expand that and do some workshops to help us as a council, but also help them organisations as well.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy, does that answer your question?
It answers it, but it gives me some concern. From that answer, I'm taking it that we haven't really spoken to councillors who've gone through LGR and where they've done asset transfers or the issues which arose from asset transfers prior to LGR. And I just think it might be a good idea if we sort of availed ourselves of that experience.
Thank you. I mean, what I would say is it's only recently that we set our own strategy and our policy, and that's the strategy that we're working to. So they're not deviating from that because of LGR. We're sticking to the strategy that this committee agreed. It's always good to learn from others and to not make the mistakes of others. So if we do have those opportunities, we should be. And some of our own officers have already been through LGR in other organisations. So there's certainly a lot of learning. And Jonathan, David, Fiona, others are attending chief exec workshops with other officers right across the county especially, but also we're looking at the country to see if we can bring some shared learnings forward. So it's a point well made, and I think something that certainly officers can take on board. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. So I've raised this concern with the Deputy Chief Exec, and I think one of the areas that is sadly lacking with the District Council is the fact that they're not working close enough with like the NALC at parish level, because I think that if officers actually understood the advice that the NALC is giving to parish members is quite different to what districts are the districts actually the process that they're going through. And I think that for some of us is quite difficult, because when it comes to best practice, what is best practice in this process? And you say about learning, but there's a lot in the parish sector that have already gone through this in a huge scale, and it is them that are going to see the pressures, not us. And one of the things that I have an issue with is the timeline of this, because as I raised with the Deputy Chief Exec, the budget pressure, and I think Phoebe's just alluded to this, is making sure they know what they're getting into. But the budget pressure for parishes will become such as, and we've seen this in other areas such as Cornwall, where the councillor said, well, if you don't take on that library, then you won't have a library in your area. But financial planning is important for parish councils, and unless we get a grip on actually moving forward, particularly with the parish councils, they will not have budgets in place. And then what we will see, and residents will see, is a sudden uptick in their precepts because they're uncapped, because there will be panic. There will be, what's going to happen if we don't take it on? And it could almost fall into a trap of actually just doing this grab without having the time to plan. And we know the governance processes that they too have to go through. And that actually is an issue for them, that they still have. We've got our process, and we're rightly going through the right process, but they too, and we should not be put in a position where they're panicking and making decisions around unsustainable transfers as well. So I think it's very important, and I'm really pleased to hear that localities involved, because they have an understanding of that level of local government. But I am concerned that the joined up thinking and joined up working isn't quite there with the district. Will be gone in 2 years, but they're the ones that will carry the can. There'll be no accountability here. and that's really important for me to see that joined up working.
Thank you, Councillor Newport, and it's very well made, points very well made. What we are doing, and I think members are aware because some of you have attended it, your parish hats on, is each quarter clerks and chairs and vice chairs in some cases are attending a meeting here with Greg, with Jonathan, with myself, with others to talk through some of the processes. They're certainly not being hounded into taking assets. We're not asking people to come forward and take these assets. They're coming forward off of their own free will to request it. And as we've seen within this report alone, there may be they're quite ambitious with some of the requests that are coming forward, and they probably won't ever meet our criteria for the strategy that we've set, and we've had this discussion before. But conversations and bringing in the NALC is very important and something that members and officers should definitely take away and have those considerations. But certainly the meeting I had with locality recently gave me some reassurances that they are alive to the issues and they are making these councils and these third parties, because it's not all councils that are coming forward for the assets, there's a host of types of people. They are making them very alive to the risk and the challenges that come with it, because actually, as you just said, we won't be here, and that potentially puts an asset at further risk if we've handed it over to someone that isn't in the right place to manage that bigger picture. So those points have all been noted and heard, can be considered. And Andy just wants to come in on that, and then I'll bring in Councillor Ward.
And I think what I tried to do in the process of principles that were agreed last year was to outline the kind of criteria that we would expect within sort of the business cases and the plan. So rather than just say we need a business case, I tried to set out what that would need to include, with a view to trying to, as I said before, property management is a serious business, and people need to kind of understand what we would be looking for, and sort of long-term investment plans, compliance, in addition to what they're actually going to do the asset for the community. So try to get that across. And as you say, I think by having organisations external to the council, they've got that national coverage. I think we can learn a lot through the process as well.
Thank you. All right, I've got Councillor Ward and then Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. This meeting that's going to be taking place with the clerks, will NALC representatives also be invited? And the only reason I say that is to look at the harmonisation and understanding where the differences there may be in advice and where those items can actually be understood and harmonised for smooth transition. Because obviously there's two different. I've seen advice from NALC, which is often quite different from what comes to the council, and there is a variance, and so we need to understand how those variations can be accommodated and where we go to actually have a smooth path to a good transition. Is that going to be something that you're proposing to do?
Yeah, well, I think following on from the comments that Councillor Newport made and then you've just endorsed, we can absolutely invite NALC along to the next meeting that we have in about 6 or 8 weeks' time, just to have that wrap up and they can potentially present. I can't make them come, but we can certainly extend the invite because I think it's a valid point. And you want to come back on that, Councillor Newport?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me come back. One of the things that I did raise with the Chief Exec is absolutely clerks attending. In terms of the chair attending, and I think that one of the things that those meetings they're great, but we need to have notes of those meetings for the council to look at, because I think the chair's busy trying to take it in, but that has to come back to the council. And I think it's a little bit unfair to expect them to be minuting meetings. So if we could arrange for someone to minute those meetings or take notes for that to go back to council for parishes, that'd be great too. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. We set a very loose agenda for it and it's more of a Q&A type session, but we can certainly get notes produced and they can be recirculated to each of the parish and town councils. Thank you. Councillor Steptoe, you've waited very patiently. Thank you again.
That's quite all right, Chairman. With reference to the comments just been made and I think you referred to as workshops, have you had any of those workshops yet? Because as chairman of a parish council, I've not received any communications on. Yeah,
I think we've had 2 meetings here, possibly even 3, and we had a clerk come that was representing, is it Barling and Sutton? Do you have a joint clerk
Yeah,
there?
I'll have to have a word with the clerk because
Right.
it filtered through.
The clerk
Okay.
came.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Okay. I'll speak to the clerk. A couple of other questions, if I may,
Of
Chair.
course.
With the expressions of interest, is that I take it that's still open, and is there a deadline for a closure point on that?
No, the strategy is just that anyone can come forward at any time with expressions of interest in assets, and it will just filter through the process.
Okay, and finally, those parish councils that have already leased properties from RDC, will those leases be automatically honoured by the new unitary council? Will that, as in per contracts and what have you, will it be a similar sort of thing?
Yes, so any lease that already exists is automatically carried forward and the terms will remain. There's a piece of work being done at the moment looking at some of the leases, I think, and just making sure that things are in order, and where there can be harmonisation, there will be. But certainly anybody that has a lease is safe from any undoing of that.
Yeah, Barling Parish actually has one lease which is 999 years. So I'm not going to worry about that one too much.
Councillor Lindham.
Thank you. It was really, Andy, you mentioned a few more expression of interest. Could those be circulated prior to the next meeting? I didn't actually hear what they were. As being part of a working group on a town council, and at the meetings that we've had, the amount of work that is actually being put into looking at the various assets and an understanding of a lease, not purchase, and going forward. I'm just looking at your expression of interest, and has Rochford District Council got a secret that we're missing, because the amount of expressions of interest they've put forward to and the amount of work that we have seen that's going to be involved in that, how are we actually monitoring that from the officers' side of things? Because, yeah, initially when this first came up, I was like a kid in the sweet shop. I want that, I want that, I want that. Then Councillor Newport chaired a meeting within Rayleigh Town Council and brought the hard shock to our attention of exactly what is actually involved in taking over the asset, in the work involved in taking over the asset, the finances involved in the asset, and just looking at what Rochford has put their hands up for. Am I missing something, or have they got a secret that we need to know about?
Well, I think I'll have to leave that for Rochford Parish Council to respond to. I know they're an ambitious council and they do have experience with managing some assets, so they've got a skill set there and they've got a team of 3 staff, but I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf. But that's why they have to go through the process, and the process is fair and transparent for everybody. So it's not just he who shouts loudest or he that sends in the most DOIs, because we've got to make sure that those assets are actually safeguarded for the community and not just handed over, and then to Councillor Newport's point, we put them at a different type of risk. So thank you. Councillor. Oh, sorry, yeah. In regards to the ones that have come forward since, they will all be showing on the report. We only brought them up tonight because they have been brought forward, but your next report will have them included plus any others. Thank you. Councillor Cross, did I see a quick hand there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the EOI from Rochford Parish Council on the Freight House and car park, I believe Hackspace are very interested in taking some rooms within the Freight House, as they're bursting at the seams where they're located now. Have they not formally put in a pre-EOI request or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so the Freight House is going through a separate piece of work. It's just that it came forward via this as well, hence it being on the report for transparency. So the Freight House, they're the groups that have been meeting with locality. So there's Hackspace, Design Cabin and other interested parties, including the parish. And that will actually be coming forward to our next committee meeting in March. So breaking news on that. That will be, a report is being put together now following those meetings, so that we will be able to properly consider that at the next meeting of Strategy, Policy and Finance. Okay, seeing as this report is just for noted, I think we've had some good discussion on it. Is everybody happy for us to note this and await further updates in March? Noted? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're almost there. Final item. Item 12 is just the committee work programme. So just a couple of points I'd like to make, if I may. So I've just mentioned there that we're going to be having a report coming forward on the Freight House, so that will be added. Now, I made this point last year, and I've made it again to Greg, that I think, obviously, we're going through the final cycle of committee meetings, but that we should have at least a guide for whoever the next committee is that come forward on some of the standing items that should be there. So although we're only really looking at March, the meeting that comes in the next municipal year, whenever that date is, I think it's worth us asking that certainly leisure is on there, because we've made the point that we want that on every committee, or it should be. LGR, at the moment, that's just covered in the chairman's update because there has been little to update on, but by then there's going to be some substantial changes, and I think it would only be right that a new council gets a report on LGR, and then obviously the assets as a standing item. So I'm just going to make that I'm just recommending that, I think, and we can cover it off properly in detail in the March meeting, but I think it's only right that on every last meeting of this municipal year, we should at least give a guide for the next one, and they can decide what if they take forward. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so on the work plan, and I agree with what you said, LGR definitely needs to go on that work plan. But in terms of the meeting dates, is this work plan just purely March's work plan? Is that right?
Yeah, so this is our last meeting of the municipal year, so that's the work plan. And I'm proposing that we also add in we don't know what the date will be because that's for annual council to agree that cycle of meetings, but I certainly think we should give committee a steer to what's been going on, because it could be a very different group of members.
Yeah, and but I think, sorry, I don't want to put anything spoke in the wheels here, but I'm not sure if we can do that if committees are changed. I get what you're saying. I've not got an objection, but I'm just saying if committees are changed, those work plans would fall away. But I would support what you say. I'm just saying, I think just check.
Yeah, no, and I did. So I spoke to Greg about it, and he was of the opinion that we could do it. We'll certainly check with Paula. Obviously, it will just be a recommendation that is the work plan for the next meeting. If they choose not to use it, or the committees change, or anything isn't the same, then that's fine. But it was more just to give people a guide as to these are things that we don't want to let slip. But that's for any new council to determine anyway. In relation to March, do we think leisure needs to be on here? It's only 6 weeks away, so does the leisure contract need to be on here, or can that just be within the chairman's update if anything's happened? Members happy with that?
Sorry, I was going to say, I think it should be on there. I think it's a really important contract we're doing, and even if there's not a lot to update, I think we really should.
It's only 6 weeks away, but I'll let Phoebe come in, and then we'll...
Let's get the project plan at the very least, so then we can start, we know where we're going with it.
Just to come back on that point, Chair, as you quite rightly said, it's 6 weeks away. Obviously, working backwards, that means the reports have to be done 2 weeks before that, so actually we only have 4 weeks. Obviously, the delegated authority is only granted to us. The budget is subject to full council approval. And regarding a project plan, we will be working with EA to deliver this scheme, so we won't necessarily have a project plan to be able to deliver, because we need to go and work with EA to build that project plan up subject to the approval. So I would suggest that any update that we have of how far we've got with the project, we'll bring in Chair's update, and then in the first committee cycle, wherever it sits in the terms of reference of any committees, whether it's this one or the one, that it will be on the agenda, that we would bring forward with any project plan and the internal governance update reports that we bring as well to the committees.
Okay, I think given the timing, that's reasonable, because we're not going to agree budget until the 17th of February, so it only actually leaves a 2-week window to deliver anything. So I'll bring forward any update between now and that time in the Chair's update, and then we'll put it on the work plan for the next meeting, or whichever meeting that goes forward to. I think I saw another hand. Was it Councillor Ward?
Yeah, it was just basically just adding on. It would just be a progress report, as it is for that period of time. In fairness to the officers and that very factor.
Yeah, exactly. So that will just come in the update, but like we did with the assets, that could have come forward in Chair's update, but we decided to put that as a standing report because of the table and the detail within it. But I think that's been a helpful debate this evening. Are we happy to note the work plan, taking on board those comments? Okay, thank you very much. I close the meeting.